Hey guys, this is Anton here. Just wanted to do a quick review of a lens that I bought last summer after I upgraded my camera to Nikon D850. And having spent like $3,000 on a full frame camera, I kind of cheaped out a little bit and I got a cheaper zoom lens. So I wanted something that would allow me to travel and kind of keep a single lens attached to my camera. And I thought that the 24 to 85 millimeter range was pretty good for travel photography. Now, this lens, I think I bought this on Amazon for around $450 at the time. Definitely a lot cheaper than some of the other similar lenses. Um, Now, it's a good range to have. It's definitely not the most popular. If you look at most of the standard zoom lenses out there, you see a lot of 24 to 70 millimeter, which is kind of the most popular all around lens format. At the time, I thought that 70 would be kind of limiting, but I'll explain later in this video why I think now that that slight trade off is probably worth it. So this lens overall, $400, you kind of get what you pay for. It's plastic construction, it's not very heavy. And what I've found, the primary kind of downsides of this lens is that the chromatic aberration is particularly bad on this lens. So most days, whether it's sunny outside or especially overcast, you will see pretty significant chromatic aberration. But nothing that is not correctable in post edit. So I haven't had major issues there, but definitely something to note. Now, this lens does come with vibration reduction, which is pretty standard for a lot of these Nikon lenses, and I wouldn't say it was better or worse than some of the other lenses that I've had. But aside from that, this lens has traveled with me on a few different trips, and I went hiking with it, and it stood up pretty well to the elements. It is weather sealed. However, after those 9 months, I am noticing that there are a few specks of dust inside the lens. So that kind of makes me question how dust and weather sealed it is, in fact. So that's a little disappointing. But we can dive into some of these sample images from this lens and really take a look at what they look like. So first, let's take a look at the 24 millimeter focal range for this lens. I focused here on the arborvitae tree, and if you take a closer look, you'll actually see that the image is pretty sharp, but moving out onto the sides, first off, there's not much of a bokeh, and the edges are a little bit softer, but nothing super noticeable. Now, going up to f5, you'll see that there's not much of a difference, still pretty sharp, and the edges are a little bit better here. Now, looking at f8, you'll see that pretty much the entire frame is sharp, both the focus point as well as the edges. I found that f8 is probably the best aperture to shoot on this lens. I've used it for a lot of my landscape shots and have been pretty content with it. Now, going up to 50 millimeter focal point. So the lower limit is 4.2 for aperture at 50 millimeters. Like I previously mentioned, it is not a constant aperture lens, so unfortunately the lower limit keeps creeping up the more you zoom in. Looking at where I focused on this image, everything is still pretty sharp and in focus on the tree. Going up to f5, you're not going to see much of a difference here. And again, at f8, everything is pretty sharp, but you will see that the edges are a little bit more blurry than they are on the 24 millimeter setting. And last but not least, I went up to 70 millimeter focal point on this lens. Now you'll see that at 70 millimeter, the aperture is 4.5 as the lower limit. With that, the post here and the tree are very much in focus and sharp, and you get a nice blur in the background. Once again, at f5, not much of a difference just because of how close it is to the lowest level available, which is 4.5. And at f8, you will get some blur when you're zoomed into 70 millimeters.
So now that we've taken a look at the different focal points and different apertures to see how they perform, let's zoom in all the way and look at the detail. First, we can zoom in to more of the corner area of an image taken at 24mm f8. And zooming into the corner, you will see that while the image is still fairly sharp, it's definitely a little soft on the edges. Nothing terrible, but compared to some of the higher end lenses, definitely a noticeable difference here. And just for comparison, let's zoom in to more of the center area where the focus point was. This is 24mm f8. You'll see that the image is very sharp here, and I'm not even zoomed in, all the way, and you can see that everything is perfectly crisp here. So I think this is just a testament to the fact that this lens is pretty darn good.
So one of the other things about this lens that is a huge difference between some of the more high-end lenses like the Tamron 24-70 is this is not a constant aperture lens. So what it means is, like, if you are on a 24mm setting of this and you have it set to the advertised 3.5 f-stop, and you start zooming in at 70 or at 85, you're not going to be able to get down as low as 3.5. You're going to be able to get down to like 4 or 4.5. So that's definitely a downside. If you're shooting at a 70mm or 85mm on this, you're not going to be able to get nearly down to 3.5. And I frankly, like, part of the big reason why I upgraded my lens is I was looking for something that would provide a little bit larger aperture for low light performance. So some of the more expensive lenses out there do allow you to have a constant aperture of 2.8. So you can be shooting at 70mm and 2.8, which is pretty impressive compared to what you can get here. But in summary, it's definitely a good starter lens if you recently upgraded your camera to a full frame, or if you are maybe a more amateur photographer and you're just taking photos for yourself and you're traveling and you want a good zoomed lens that's all around. I think this is definitely a very good pick. I personally haven't had the some of the other lenses that are offered, like 18-300. I know that's another popular kind of ultra zoom lens out there for full frame cameras. And I've actually heard that this one performs a little bit better, hence why I bought it originally. But that's that. So keep an eye out for more reviews. I'm getting a lot of different lenses right now and kind of upgrading the gear, so I'm excited to share some of the early feedback.